The grand ballroom of the Ritz sparkled under crystal chandeliers as New York's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hospital fundraiser. Among the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits stood Alex Chen, the 35-year-old tech genius whose company, Future Vision, had revolutionized artificial intelligence. Despite his billions, Alex stood slightly apart from the crowd, nursing a glass of sparkling water and checking his phone. That's when he saw her. Olivia Parker moved through the crowd with natural grace, her emerald green dress catching the light as she spoke passionately to potential donors about the hospital's new pediatric wing. Her brown eyes lit up when she smiled, and her genuine enthusiasm stood out in a room full of practiced charm. "She's the best hire we've made in years," Alex overheard a hospital board member say. "Turned our marketing department completely around in just 6 months." Alex found himself walking over before he could think twice. Up close, he noticed the small crease between her eyebrows as she concentrated on explaining a complex medical program in simple terms to her listeners. She didn't miss a beat when he joined the group, treating him exactly the same as the others despite his well-known status. Later, as the evening wound down, they found themselves at the same quiet corner of the bar. "I noticed you didn't touch the champagne either," Olivia said, raising her own glass of sparkling water with a lime. "Can't stand the stuff," Alex admitted. "Gives me a headache. Though I suspect your reason's different." "I like staying sharp," she shrugged. "Plus, someone needs to remember all the donation promises people make when they're feeling generous and tipsy." He laughed, a real laugh, not the polite chuckle he usually managed at these events. They talked for hours, long after most guests had left. Olivia told him about growing up in a small town in Ohio where her mom worked 2 jobs to put her through college. Alex shared stories about his immigrant parents' corner store and how he coded his first program on a second-hand laptop. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, yet they shared the same drive, the same dedication to making something of themselves. When Olivia spoke about her dreams for the hospital's outreach programs, Alex found himself offering ideas, getting excited about possibilities. She wasn't afraid to disagree with him, to challenge his assumptions, and he loved it. Their first official date was nothing like either expected. A surprise thunderstorm ruined Alex's planned rooftop dinner. Instead, they ended up at a tiny Vietnamese restaurant, sitting on plastic chairs and eating the best pho they'd ever tasted. Olivia had noodle broth on her designer blazer and didn't care one bit. Alex knew then she was different. The next year flew by in a whirlwind of laughter, late-night conversations, and shared dreams. They complemented each other perfectly. Her warmth softened his tendency to be too analytical, while his strategic thinking helped her turn her big ideas into reality. The media called them a power couple, but in private moments, they were just Alex and Olivia, 2 people who'd found their missing piece. The proposal happened on a random Tuesday. No elaborate plans or camera crews, though Alex had considered them. Just the 2 of them, making dinner in his penthouse kitchen. Olivia was telling a funny story about her day, gesturing with a wooden spoon, tomato sauce everywhere. Alex blurted out, "Marry me." She stared at him for a long moment, then smiled that brilliant smile and said, "Took you long enough to ask." The wedding planning took on a life of its own. Their simple ideas somehow evolved into an extravagant affair at Lake Como, with 300 guests and a budget that could have funded a small country. Neither of them minded much. They were too happy, too caught up in their perfect love story. The tabloids couldn't get enough of them. "Tech billionaire finds his heart," the headlines proclaimed. Their engagement photos went viral, not the professional ones, but a candid shot of them laughing on a park bench, Olivia's head thrown back in genuine joy. Alex looking at her like she hung the moon. Everything was perfect. The villa was booked, the flowers were ordered, the custom-made dress was ready. Their friends joked about them being disgustingly in love. Even Alex's usually stoic board members seemed caught up in the romance of it all. Just 3 days before they were set to fly to Italy, Alex sat in his office late at night, reviewing some last-minute wedding details. His phone buzzed with a message that would shatter everything. The screen glowed in the dark room as he read it over and over, his perfect world beginning to crack. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a story that would shake Manhattan's elite to its core. To be continued, the rehearsal dinner at the Street Regis sparkled with excitement. 200 of New York's finest gathered to celebrate what everyone called the wedding of the decade. Crystal glasses clanked as waiters weaved through the crowd with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Olivia's cream-colored dress caught the light as she moved from table to table, making sure every guest felt welcome. Alex hadn't shown up yet, but no one seemed worried. Everyone knew how busy a CEO could be, especially 3 days before flying 200 people to Italy for a wedding. Olivia checked her phone again, reading his last message from 2 hours ago. Running late. Important meeting. Start without me. She pushed down the slight unease in her stomach. This was Alex, after all, the man who'd spent 6 months planning the perfect proposal only to blurt it out over pasta sauce. He probably got caught up in some last-minute wedding details. The evening progressed, speeches began. Olivia's best friend talked about their college days, making everyone laugh with stories about Olivia's determination to succeed despite working 3 jobs to pay tuition. The hospital board chairman raised a glass to their future, praising how their love story had inspired record donations to the children's wing. Just as dessert was being served, Alex finally arrived. Something was off. His usual warm smile was gone, replaced by a tightness around his eyes that Olivia had never seen before. He didn't look at her as he walked to the front of the room, tapping a spoon against his water glass for attention. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. This wasn't right. This wasn't how Alex normally spoke. "The wedding is cancelled." The words fell like bombs in the silent room. Olivia stood frozen, her chocolate mousse untouched before her. This had to be a joke, right? One of Alex's awkward attempts at humor that she usually found endearing. But he wasn't finished. "I recently received some disturbing information about Olivia's past." He pulled out his phone, his voice growing colder with each word. Or should I say, about Jennifer Wilson's past. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. That name, she hadn't heard it in 15 years. Not since she legally changed it after. "My private investigator discovered that before moving to New York, Olivia was involved in a significant financial scandal at her previous company in Chicago. She operated under a different name, different social security number. Everything about her past is fabricated." Gasps echoed through the room. Phones came out as people started recording. This would be all over social media within minutes. "Alex, please," Olivia finally found her voice. "This isn't what you think. Let me explain." But he wouldn't look at her. "Security will escort everyone out. The wedding planners will contact guests about refunds for their Italy arrangements." The room erupted in chaos. People whispered, pointed, and stared. Olivia's best friend tried to reach her, but security was already moving everyone toward the exits. Through her tears, Olivia caught glimpses of faces she'd known for years. Hospital board members, colleagues, friends, all looking at her with shock and disgust. She tried one last time to reach Alex, to explain about the name change, about her stepfather's crimes, about how she'd legally protected herself from his actions. But Alex had already turned away, surrounded by his security team, disappearing through a side door. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Tech billionaire exposes fraudulent fiancé. Wedding cancelled. The secret past of Olivia Parker. Social media exploded with theories and accusations. People who'd smiled at her just hours ago were now sharing the stories, adding their own speculations. Late that night, alone in her apartment, Olivia sat in darkness, watching her phone light up with message after message. Most were reporters wanting comments. Some were from now former friends expressing their disappointment. The hospital board had already sent an email about her temporary leave of absence. She opened her laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. She could explain everything, release a statement, try to salvage what was left of her reputation. But something stopped her. A new feeling was growing inside her, replacing the shock and hurt. As she stared at a photo of Alex from happier times, she felt it crystallize into something harder, colder. He hadn't even given her a chance to explain. After a year of claiming to love her, he believed the worst without a single question. Fine, if that's how he wanted to play it. Olivia opened a new document and began to type. Not a public statement, not an explanation, something else entirely. A plan. Let them think they knew her story. They hadn't seen anything yet. To be continued, The morning after the rehearsal dinner disaster, Olivia woke up to find her face plastered across every news website in the city. Her phone had finally stopped buzzing around 3 a.m., but her email inbox was overflowing with messages she couldn't bear to read. She pulled herself out of bed and walked to the kitchen of her luxury apartment, a place that had felt like home just yesterday. Now everything felt different. The coffee maker Alex had bought her sat on the counter, its chrome surface reflecting her tired face. She unplugged it and shoved it in a drawer. The TV turned on automatically at 8 a.m., a feature she'd never bothered to disable. The morning news was already discussing her scandal. A stern-faced reporter stood outside Future Vision's headquarters. Sources close to CEO Alex Chen reveal that the investigation into his former fiancée began after suspicious patterns emerged in her background check. While Ms. Parker has not responded to requests for comment, financial experts are praising Mr. Chen's due diligence in protecting his company's interests. Olivia laughed bitterly. Due diligence? He hadn't even asked her about the name change, hadn't given her a chance to explain about her stepfather's embezzlement scheme, how she'd been just 17 when he tried to pin everything on her mother, how changing her name had been the only way to escape his shadow and protect herself legally. Her phone rang. Her boss at the hospital. She let it go to voicemail. The email had already arrived anyway. Administrative leave pending investigation. 15 years of building a new life, gone in one night. Walking to her home office, she passed the spare room that still held her wedding dress. Through the partially open door, she could see the garment bag hanging like a ghost. Inside was the dress she'd spent months designing, classic ivory silk with hand-sewn pearls, each one chosen to match her mother's old necklace. Her mother! The thought hit her like a truck. She grabbed her phone and dialed the familiar number. "I saw the news," her mom said immediately. "Baby, are you okay?" "Mom, Olivia's voice cracked. "Everything's gone. My job, my friends, they're all believing his version without even asking me." "Listen to me," her mother's voice grew firm. "You survived what Richard did to us. You rebuilt once. You can do it again." Richard, her stepfather, the man who'd stolen millions from his company, tried to frame her mother and disappeared with their life savings. The man whose actions had forced Olivia to change her name just to get into college without his shadow following her. "It's different this time, Mom. Alex didn't just hurt me, he destroyed everything I built. The hospital board. They were like family. Now they won't even take my calls." She opened her laptop, scanning news articles. Alex's PR team had been busy. Every story painted him as the vigilant businessman protecting his company from a potential threat. Some articles even suggested she'd been planning to steal corporate secrets. A notification popped up, her bank account. The joint accounts she'd shared with Alex were already frozen. Her credit cards had been cancelled. She had her own savings, thankfully, but watching her financial life get dismantled in real time felt surreal. Her doorman called up. "Ms. Parker, there are reporters in the lobby. Should I send them away?" "Yes, please. And Mike? Thank you for asking." At least someone still treated her like a human being. Walking to the window, Olivia could see the media vans parked outside. Photographers waited like vultures for her to emerge. She'd have to leave eventually. Her lease would be up soon, and she doubted the building's wealthy residents would want her to renew. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend. "I tried to defend you at work. They put me on notice. I'm so sorry, but I can't risk my job. I have kids." Olivia didn't bother responding. She understood. Everyone had something to lose. Opening her laptop again, she began to research. Alex might have resources and power, but she had something he didn't expect, nothing left to lose. She'd learned from her stepfather's mistakes, not how to commit crimes, but how to track them, how to follow money trails, how to spot the kind of secrets rich men thought they could bury. Her marketing expertise had taught her how to build narratives. Now she used that knowledge differently. Alex thought he knew her past. He had no idea what she was capable of. A plan began to form in her mind. Not a plan for revenge. That would be too simple, too expected. No, this would be about justice. About truth. About showing the world that every story has two sides. She opened a new document and began typing, Phase 1. To be continued. 3 months after the rehearsal dinner disaster, Olivia sat in a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, surrounded by corkboards covered in notes and printouts. Her designer clothes were long gone, sold to fund her investigation. Her laptop glowed in the dim light as she worked late into the night. The media circus had finally died down. New scandals had taken her place in the headlines. Alex's company, Future Vision, had just announced record profits, and he'd been featured in Business Weekly as tech's most eligible bachelor. The article didn't mention her once. Olivia took a sip of cold coffee and studied her work. The corkboards told a story, one that had taken her months to piece together. Company documents, financial records, old news articles, and social media posts connected by red strings created a web of information. She'd learned more about corporate investigation in 3 months than most people learn in years. "Thanks for the lessons, Richard," she muttered, thinking of her stepfather. His crimes had taught her what to look for, where money really flows in big companies. She'd just never thought she'd use that knowledge. Her phone buzzed, a message from her new identity in Future Vision's HR department. She'd applied under the name Lisa Chen, no relation to Alex, with an impeccable fake resume and references. The background check had been thorough, but she'd prepared for months. They'd hired her 2 weeks ago. "Meeting tomorrow about the new tech acquisition. AC will be there." Olivia smiled. Phase 1 was working. As a low-level HR coordinator, she had access to the company's internal systems. More importantly, she could move through the building unnoticed. It was amazing how invisible administrative staff could be to executives. Her laptop pinged with an alert. Another message, this time from her other alias, a junior reporter at a small tech blog. That identity had been cultivating sources inside Future Vision for months, focusing on disgruntled employees who'd been overlooked for promotions or pushed aside. She opened her notebook, reviewing her findings. Future Vision's success wasn't as clean as it appeared. Their breakthrough AI technology, parts of it looked suspiciously similar to code from a small startup that had mysteriously gone bankrupt 3 years ago. The founder had signed an NDA and disappeared with a large payoff. But that was just the beginning. Hidden in the company's financial records were patterns that reminded her of her stepfather's schemes, nothing illegal, but definitely questionable. Money moving through shell companies, patents transferred under mysterious circumstances, former employees silenced with generous settlements. Olivia wasn't planning anything illegal. She didn't need to. The truth would be damaging enough if she could prove it. And thanks to her marketing background, she knew exactly how to package and time each revelation for maximum impact. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. "Are you sure about this?" Olivia looked at the photo still stuck in the corner of her mirror, her and Alex at the charity gala where they'd met. She'd kept it as a reminder, not of love, but of how easily people can deceive you. "Yes," she typed back. "But I'm doing it the right way, everything by the book." She turned back to her laptop, opening the file marked Phase 2. Tomorrow's meeting would be crucial. Alex wouldn't recognize her. The brown contacts, glasses, and completely different style made sure of that. But she'd see him up close for the first time since that night. Her plan was methodical, designed to unfold slowly. First, shake investor confidence with well-timed leaks about the questionable tech acquisitions. Then get the tech blogs interested in the pattern of vanishing startups. Finally, help the former employees find their voices and their courage. Alex had taught her an important lesson about power. It wasn't about money or position, it was about information and knowing how to use it. A notification popped up on her screen. Another former Future Vision employee had agreed to talk. This one had been there during the company's early days. He had stories to tell about the real origins of their core technology. Olivia added his name to her chart. The web was growing. Soon it would be strong enough to hold the weight of everything she planned to reveal. She glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. The meeting was in 7 hours. Time to get some rest. Tomorrow, she'd walk into Future Vision's gleaming headquarters, past the security guards, through the expensive lobby. She'd sit in that meeting, take notes, and watch Alex Chen talk about his company's bright future. And he wouldn't have any idea that the quiet HR coordinator in the corner was about to change everything. To be continued. The morning of the board meeting dawned bright and clear. Alex Chen stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city wake up. His assistant had just brought him his usual green smoothie and the day's schedule. Everything was perfect as always. Until it wasn't. His phone buzzed, then buzzed again. And again. Within minutes it wouldn't stop. He grabbed it, scrolling through message after message from board members, investors, and reporters. All asking the same thing: was it true? The headline on his screen made his blood run cold. Future Vision's AI technology, innovation, or theft. Below it was a detailed investigative report, complete with internal documents and testimonials from former employees. The article had been published simultaneously by 3 major tech blogs and was already spreading like wildfire. Get legal on the phone, he barked into his intercom. And call an emergency board meeting. Now. Across town, in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, Olivia watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens. She timed the release perfectly, 8:30 a.m., just as the market opened. Future Vision's stock was already dropping. Her phone lit up with a message from one of her sources inside the company. Complete panic here. AC just kicked a trash can across his office. She allowed herself a small smile. Phase 2 was working even better than expected. The article had been months in the making, every fact triple-checked, every source verified, every document authenticated. She'd learned from Alex's mistake: never strike without absolute certainty. Back at Future Vision, the boardroom was filling up. Alex paced at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor cracking. Board members whispered among themselves, glancing at their phones and tablets. Who leaked these documents? Alex demanded. How did they get our internal files? Nobody noticed Lisa Chen, the quiet HR coordinator, taking notes in the corner. Nobody saw her watching Alex's every move, cataloging his reactions. The company's legal team presented their response strategy, but the damage was already done. By noon, the stock had dropped 30%. Major investors were demanding answers. Tech forums were buzzing with speculation about which other Future Vision technologies might be stolen. More damaging were the personal stories emerging. Former employees speaking about toxic workplace culture. Startup founders describing predatory acquisition tactics. Even Alex's old college roommate had come forward, claiming Alex had stolen their joint project idea. Olivia had found them all, one by one. Not to bribe or blackmail, she'd simply offered them a chance to tell their stories. Amazing how many people had been waiting for that opportunity. In his office that evening, Alex finally sat alone, tie loosened, jacket discarded. His phone showed missed calls from his brother, his parents, even his ex-fiancee's best friend. The last one making pause. Why would she be calling now? He opened his laptop, searching for news about Olivia. Nothing recent. She'd practically disappeared after the rehearsal dinner scandal. His PI had lost track of her months ago. A knock at his door. His assistant entered with more bad news. 2 major clients had just pulled their contracts. The board was calling for an emergency session tomorrow. There were rumors of a potential vote of no confidence. Olivia watched the building from a coffee shop across the street. She could see Alex's office lights still on, a lonely beacon in the darkening sky. Part of her felt a twinge of, not regret exactly. Recognition, maybe. She remembered how it felt to watch your life unravel in real time. But she wasn't done. This was just the beginning. In her bag was a USB drive containing Phase 3, evidence of financial irregularities that would interest not just the media, but federal regulators. She'd release it next week, after the board had time to panic about the current crisis. Her phone buzzed. Another message from inside Future Vision. Apparently, Alex was launching an internal investigation, demanding to know who had access to the leaked documents. Olivia smiled. He was looking in all the wrong places. She packed up her laptop and headed home. Tomorrow, she'd return to Future Vision as Lisa Chen, watching the aftermath up close. She'd take notes in meetings, file reports, and continue gathering information. The perfect observer, hidden in plain sight. As she walked past the building, she caught her reflection in the gleaming windows. Gone was the polished marketing executive who'd once graced charity galas. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood that real power isn't in having secrets, it's in knowing when to reveal them. To be continued. 2 weeks after the initial scandal broke, Future Vision's sleek headquarters felt like a different place. Security guards now patrolled every floor. Its teams worked around the clock, checking for data breaches. The once bustling cafeteria was half empty. Layoffs had already begun. Alex hadn't left the office in 3 days. His normally pristine appearance had given way to rumpled shirts and dark circles under his eyes. The board's vote of no confidence had failed, but barely. He kept his position by a single vote. In the HR department, Lisa Chen, still perfectly disguised as Olivia, filed reports about the mounting exits. Senior developers were jumping ship. Middle managers were updating their resumes. Even the cleaning staff whispered about looking for new jobs. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Future Vision under federal investigation. Phase 3 had worked perfectly. The financial irregularities she'd uncovered had caught the SEC's attention. The company's stock had dropped another 40%. But the real damage wasn't financial, it was personal. Alex's carefully crafted image as a tech visionary was crumbling. Former classmates had come forward with stories about his college days. Old business partners shared emails showing his ruthless tactics. Even his own brother had given an anonymous interview, hinting at family secrets. Olivia watched from her corner desk as Alex stormed through the office, snapping at anyone who crossed his path. The confident CEO who'd once commanded every room was gone. In his place was a man drowning in paranoia, seeing enemies in every shadow. Her laptop pinged. Another message from her network of sources. This one was big. The company's chief technology officer wanted to talk. He'd been with Future Vision from the start, and he knew everything. That evening, in a quiet diner far from the office, the CTO spilled 2 decades of secrets. He was tired of covering up, he said. Tired of watching Alex take credit for other people's work. He handed Olivia a drive containing proof that their most profitable patents weren't really theirs. Back in her apartment, Olivia added the new information to her wall of evidence. The web had grown so complex she'd had to buy more corkboards. Each string represented a connection, a betrayal, a lie exposed. Her phone rang, her mother again. The news says he's selling his penthouse, her mom said, and his vacation homes. They're saying he might lose everything. Olivia looked at her reflection in the window. He lost everything the moment he chose to destroy someone without getting the whole story. The next morning, she walked into Future Vision for what she knew would be one of the last times. The federal investigators were coming today. Her badge still worked, but security was tighter. Everyone was a suspect now. In the break room, she overheard 2 executives talking in hushed voices. The company's biggest investor had pulled out overnight. There were rumors of bankruptcy, of a hostile takeover. Alex had stopped answering calls from the board. She passed his office on her way back to HR. Through the glass walls, she could see him standing at his window, just like he used to. But his shoulders were slumped now. The city's golden boy had lost his shine. Her computer chimed with a new email. The board had called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. This was it, the final phase of her plan. She'd released everything except one crucial piece of information, proof that Alex's private investigator had fabricated the evidence about her past. She'd saved it for last, knowing it would hurt the most. Not just his company, but his reputation for judgment. Everyone would know he'd destroyed an innocent woman's life without proper verification. In the tech world, where data was everything, that was unforgivable. As she packed up her desk, Lisa Chen had already submitted her resignation. Olivia felt strangely empty. Not sad, not happy, just done. The revenge she planned so carefully was almost complete. Tomorrow, the board would remove Alex as CEO. The company he'd built would be sold off in pieces. His reputation, his power, his carefully constructed world, all of it would be gone. Just like he'd done to her. Walking out of Future Vision's doors for the last time, Olivia didn't look back. She'd learned something important about revenge. The best kind doesn't come from violence or threats. It comes from simply revealing the truth that was there all along. She had one final meeting to prepare for. One last confrontation that would bring this whole story full circle. To be continued, 1 year to the day after the rehearsal dinner disaster, the annual Children's Hospital fundraiser was in full swing. The same crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, The same wealthy crowd filled the ballroom. But everything else had changed. Olivia stood at the entrance, wearing a simple black dress, nothing like the designer gowns she'd worn in her previous life. Her hair was back to its natural color, her face free of the disguise she'd worn as Lisa Chen. She'd earned the right to be herself again. She checked her phone one last time. The evening news was running their biggest story. Future Vision CEO steps down amid scandal. The company's stock had hit rock bottom. The board had finally forced Alex out after months of declining profits and federal investigations. Taking a deep breath, she walked into the ballroom. Heads turned. Whispers followed. But these weren't the same whispers as a year ago. Now people knew the truth about her innocence, about Alex's rushed judgment, about everything. She spotted him at the bar, alone, nursing what looked like sparkling water. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. The past year had aged him more than time alone could explain. "Hello, Alex." He froze at the sound of her voice, turned slowly. The glass in his hand trembled slightly. "Olivia." His voice was barely a whisper. "But how are you here?" She sat down next to him, ordered her own sparkling water. "I was invited. The hospital board reinstated me last month. Turns out they needed someone who could help rebuild their reputation after associating with a fallen tech star." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "It was you," he said, "not a question. Lisa Chen. The leaks. All of it." "You taught me well," she replied. "About doing proper research. About verifying sources. About not jumping to conclusions." He stared into his glass. "Why here? Why now?" "Because this is where our story started. Seems right that it should end here too." She pulled out a folder, placed it on the bar between them. "Your private investigator confessed. Showed me all the messages where you pushed him to find dirt on me, even if he had to stretch the truth." Alex's shoulders slumped. "I was scared," he admitted. "Everything was too perfect. You were too perfect. I thought." "You thought I was like your father," Olivia finished. "The man who abandoned your family, left you with nothing. You were so afraid of being betrayed again that you betrayed me first." He looked up sharply. "How did you?" "I did what you should have done. I investigated. I talked to people. I learned the whole story, not just the parts that fit what I wanted to believe." Around them, the party continued. A year ago, they'd been the center of attention. Now they were just two people having a quiet conversation at a bar. "I lost everything," Alex said. "No," Olivia corrected him. "You lost what you built on lies. The money, the power, the fake reputation. But you still have a chance to build something real, something honest." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "Your brother still loves you, you know. He's worried about you. And your mom, she keeps that photo of you at your college graduation on her mantle. The one from before you got rich, when you still smiled like you meant it." Alex's eyes glistened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because revenge wasn't my real goal. Truth was. And the truth is, you're not a bad person, Alex. You're just someone who forgot how to trust." She picked up her purse. "Don't let fear rule your life. It makes you miss the real things. The good things." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Alex? That startup founder you pushed out 3 years ago. He's starting a new company. He could use a coding partner who actually understands the tech. Someone willing to work from the ground up, this time doing it right." With that, she walked away. Through the crowd, past the chandeliers, into the cool night air. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Is it done?" Olivia looked back at the building where her life had fallen apart a year ago. But she wasn't the same person who'd walked out of here in tears. She was stronger now. Wiser. "Yes," she typed back. "It's done. All of it." She'd learned something important about revenge. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about showing them a path to becoming better. As her car pulled away from the curb, she smiled. Tomorrow, she had a meeting with the hospital board about expanding their children's programs. Life was moving forward again. And this time, she was writing her own story. The end.